Welcome to Zamora Woodworking. I'm Nick. Today we're going to go over how to make this table right here. This is a torsion table. This is when you're making things out of wood. This is probably one of the best ways to make sure that your table does not move. It exploits a couple different principles and makes for a very stable platform. Unless you go metal, I don't think you can do much better than this. And also for the cost, it's really not too bad. This table itself is overall dimensions is 66 by 48, and the pieces that are cut to fit in here are 65 by 47. So they end up being 1 inch short, because on one side you put this guy, and on the other side you put another piece of this. This is all made out of half inch MDF. So what you do is you cut your different strips, and with your spacing, you end up, you'll see in the video here, I think I go over what spacing I use and such, but I like to use dados. A lot of other people will cut them into little pieces like this, put in Craig screws and screw them together. I feel that if you do that, you miss out on an important property where it will not pull apart, because it'll be a single piece of wood from end to end, and then just cut out dados to fit the other one over it. So you use a single piece of wood from end to end, and end to end this way. They end up going over each other. You cut a dado a half an inch, so I used half inch MDF, and what it ends up looking like is like a webbing, and you put a top skin and a bottom skin on it. You glue them together, and all I did was hold it with pin nails. It doesn't need to be held by much. Do one side one day, one side the other day. Make sure they're pushed together and glue them together. And as long as you do this off of a flat surface, you're going to get a very flat piece at the end. However, if it isn't exactly perfectly flat, because of what you're doing with it, it's not a big deal, since you just really don't want movement. So as long as this thing doesn't move, you'll be in great shape. You just need to make sure that this doesn't move anymore, and it needs to be within a decent tolerance of flatness. But what I'm saying with the movement is as long as this part and this part in relation to each other don't move, and this bottom part doesn't move, you'll be fine, because you're going to flatten your wasteboard anyways. So as long as that movement never changes, you're fine. Obviously build this off of the flattest piece of wood or board or table or anything else that you have, so that you can get that incredible flatness. But at the end of the day, the main benefit and the main thing you need to make sure that you get out of this is that it's dimensionally sound. Like, it's not going to move. And since these webbings that are in here are sandwiched between each other, they can't move. The thickness of this material and the thickness of what you use inside, if you use a 1 inch piece of MDF, it's not going to really buy you anything, because you're exploiting the MDF being this way versus being flat. Flat, you know, it wants to bend this way. Obviously I'm not gonna be able to bend this piece, but you kind of get the point. If this is a lot thinner, it's much harder to bend it this way than it would be this way. And then, like with airplane skins, they do that internal support to maintain a shape, and then they put a skin on top, a skin on bottom, and it doesn't want to move whatsoever. Taken into the fact that you have them going this way and this way on the inside supports, and you have something that is very dimensionally sound and will not really move on you. Also, the added benefit is it doesn't really matter what you set it on. I know there'll be people that'll complain that, oh, you need the absolute best of the best of the best of the best of the best. If you're cutting wood, you're not going to have problems. Obviously sealing this is better. I'm not too worried about it. I don't do anything that crazy accurate, but this board right here, or this table, it's all free floating. It is very heavy, but it's free floating. I have a couple pocket screws I'll anchor it down with, but I'm not too terribly worried, because the whole design on this is that it's dimensionally sound. So this video truly goes over how to make this guy here. I put in a couple of videos on the cart below, but I mean, really, you could put 2 sawhorses to hold it, and it's not a big deal. What I did like to do with mine is I added in power on either side, and then I also made some cable holes to route power for like the Y gantry, and this one here as well. They route underneath inside. I pre-drilled all those all the way across, and I also drilled from here all the way to the back. just in case I ever want to run anything there. But now my wires are nice and clean. I don't worry about getting them hit. You know, they're all trapped in here, and then like right there I can still access them too. But if I ever need to run anything across or future expansions, I got that option. So before we jump into things, if you could like, subscribe, share, whatever, comment, it really helps out small channels like ours. Bigger channels don't notice, we absolutely do, and this is a ton of work to put these videos together, but with your guys' feedback and support, it's really made it worth it. And let's jump into it. Thank you. Okay, we got this rip down here, and it is cut to 65, which actually it's going to be cut down a little bit more than that because on either end we're going to have a piece of this, but I cut it a little long so that I can rip it next and then square up the ends in respect to that. It's easier to cut off more at the very end than try to get it perfect and never ding it up or anything while you go along. So next we'll take this to the table saw. We'll rip this into strips. It's on top of another torsion table that I made in the past. If you look, here's the edges here. It was 2 inches thick. I think that's plenty. So I'm gonna go with 2 inch instead of 3, because this thing's heavy enough. I actually messed up my back putting it up here and messing with the way it was anyways. So this one's gonna be bigger. So let's cut this one down and rip it into strips. Also, when I was cutting, if you noticed, I put this guy down. This is just the typical insulation board that you can get at Home Depot and Lowe's real cheap. This is amazing to break down panels, so you don't have to worry about supporting it or it falling or whatever. So if you have it on top of a table, you put this, you set your depth so you're just barely cutting past this. See all the little score marks? But then you don't have to worry about panels falling for the most part, and it really just saves you. And then this is my little Craig ripping jig. This thing's pretty awesome. I use this quite often if I have to do long cuts that I can't get done on the table saw or don't feel like doing on the table saw. So next we'll start on ripping these down, and then we'll cut the pieces that will fit the other way. I believe they're 32 inches, and rip those down as well, and cut some dados and start assembling. All right. Okay, so got all of our boards cut. Okay, got all of our boards cut. I don't know why I was thinking 34 inches. I must have looked at the wrong diagram. But anyways, my last table that I have downstairs for the woodworker was 48 inches, so it looks like it'll come pretty close. I cut these at 46 3/4. Plus you're gonna have the outside, so I'm gonna be really close. I'll have another 1/2 inch on either side, so another inch on it. So I'll be at 47 3/4. I'll be a 1/4 inch right around there. All right, so the next part is I have to see where all these were going to intersect. I just did them on 10-inch centers, but since they are not the exact same, so they don't end exactly on the end, there's not 10 inches there, I made sure to mark them down here with an X so I know which side they start from. Marked my 10s. I did it on the same here because it's also not the same here. So these marks are for where these are going to intersect, and I need to cut the dado, so it'll be a 1/2 inch wide dado and then 1 inch deep, a little deeper than 1 inch and a little wider than a 1/2 inch, depending on how close you want to cut it. Don't make it too much bigger, but make it enough to where you can fit them together. Put your skin on there so it'll all stiffen up. So the general premise of these is obviously this board is very, very weak in this direction, but in this direction, super strong. Like this way, I can bend the heck out of it. This way, no way. And if you do a bunch of those in an interlocking grid and you put it together, the other big part is you need to put it together on a completely flat surface. So create a flat surface, whatever you got to do to, it's going to mimic whatever surface you base it off of. There's other videos online where I see people plane boards and they'll start with 2 sawhorses and they'll create basically a skeleton to start all this on. Well, since I already have one that's flat, I'm just going to use this for my base, and it's going to mimic this board. So if this one wasn't flat, the one I'm creating is not going to be flat. So you need a flat surface to base this off of. Cutting these dados, I could do them one by one and set up on a table saw and cut your dados that way. You have to get your depth just right. Obviously, you got to need a dado stack. This is the center of the cut. What I plan to do, I'm going to cheat, is I'm going to clamp these guys together when they're all flush, clamp them together, and then I'm going to take them downstairs and may as well use my Onefinity to cut some sweet dados. So what I'm going to do is clamp those together, make sure that it is square to my board downstairs, and then get my bit zeroed off of here, and I'll just do Etch-a-Sketch mode, which that's what a lot of people like to laugh about. It's just using the controller free-handed. If you use the controller and you press the bumpers up here, so there's a right bumper and there's a left bumper, I think the left one locks it so you can only go up and down, and the right one locks it so you can only go left and right. By up and down, I mean in the Y direction, and left and right in the X direction. Those bumpers, if you hold them, it'll lock you out one way or the other. So I'll get to my depth where I want it, and then lock it, and also have my X or my Y coordinate. I'll hold it and I'll just have it go sideways, and then move up a hair, lock it again, go sideways the other way, and I'll just cut this out until I get right to where I want. And I can also look at the screen, or if I get that spot and set it as my 0, I can also look at the screen. I can find out precisely exactly where I'm at, moving up, and then left and right. That doesn't, well, X direction doesn't really matter because you're just going to breeze through the material, and then you'll know your Z because you'll zero this and you can move down exactly ½ an inch, and it's, I think, a great way of cheating it. And then because these are all the same, I'm thinking currently I might line up all of these and lock it and then just knock them out. I mean, the last couple I'll have to do separately, but if I get it right, I'll get it right for all of them, and it'll be great and hopefully be a little cheating step. But for everyone else who doesn't have their machine yet or was patient enough to wait for the journeyman from the get-go, you can just use either your table saw or any other saw you'd like to use for that. All right. Okay, let it set overnight and dry. Here are the dimensions for the Journeyman. It looks like up here we got 60.324. This is in inches or freedom units. And then 53.75 for the inner, for just the brackets right there. With the 60.324, I think I'm going to be great. That's going to be the length there. And then with the last one, since you'll be reusing these brackets here, I'll be just fine because I'm just shy of 4 feet. At the front here where these cables are, they kind of protrude a bit. Obviously they don't make a perfect 90, so I'm going to give them a little leeway. That is what I've cut these guys out for, so that bracket will line up somewhere in this vicinity. When I have the skin on, I'll drill a hole here. I'll use my fishing rod to fish the wire all the way through over to here, and then run it out, and then the wire from this side will go down. It'll come out as well, and then on this lower side is where I like to mount my controller. So then these are all hidden, because if not, your wire would be out here in the open, or you have to bring it out over here, then bring it under. And it seemed like, at least with the Woodworker, the wires were just the right length. I mean, they give you a little bit of wiggle room, but not much, and I understand that. I mean, you can't just leave a couple feet of wire on there, and they obviously know the distance of which they're going to be separated, so that does make sense to me. Over here, I did the same thing, and I cut holes here, because obviously when this skin's on, it'll be glued on and be permanent. It's not coming off of there. And this is just in case I want to run power, or who knows what other upgrades may happen in the future. These holes are obviously incredibly difficult to do in the future, but they're pretty easy to do right now. What I'm thinking about right now is I may drill, so that part is going to be my front. What I may do is drill holes here all the way through, all the way to the front, not drill out the front because it'll look nice, and if I don't end up using it, I don't use it, but I'll have this path here, and then I'll do the same thing on this side. I'll drill from back here and I'll drill all the way through, all the way up to the front, and I'll have this path, but I'll leave this one undrilled, so if I ever want it, obviously I know, see I have my marks here of where that board lines up, and if I ever want it, I can just drill that out and be good. Or if maybe there's just a wire that goes from the back, I'll just run it on through and then I can send it out this way. And you know, if I need more room later, you know, I don't think the bundle thickness will be thicker than this, even with any wires I run through here. But if there is, I can always drill another one over here. Same with the back to bring it out a bit more. Really, in hindsight, what I probably should have done with this back part, since I didn't know I was going to use it, is left these undrilled because I know that they exist. And I could have left a little like marker here, just letting it know, because having these holes isn't the biggest deal. Obviously you don't want a ton through this, but having a couple of them, not a big deal. The strength will still be there. And this build by far is not perfect. I mean, there's going to be better ways that you could build this, and mine will be really good. The deflections won't be bad or anything else. My biggest thing, it may not be 100% flat as you ever would want it, but as long as it doesn't move, I truthfully don't care, because when I surface my spoil board, say I'm off by, I don't know, 1/1000th from here to that side. When I surface my spoil board, that's gone. So after that, I truthfully don't care. As long as it doesn't move after that, it doesn't matter to me. I really don't care. The only thing I care about is every time I go to use this, it is what it is and it doesn't change. I saw some guys on the forum that cut out some holes in this and that to bring boards up like this. And then they could cut, dovetails or whatever they wanted in there. I might do that in the future. I got to think that one through, what I want to do. I don't know how much I'd even use it, so I'm not doing it now. But I figure, if I do cut something like that, I can brace it different ways, or the strength of this isn't going to be so dependent on just one of those being messed up or anything like that. So I'm not too terribly worried. Anyways, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the top board on here, obviously apply a bunch of glue. What I did last time and I messed up on is you really should be putting Like once you put all that glue on, you should put some sort of like a spacer, something like this. And then when you get that board, rest it on there, get it right where you want it, and then set it down. I screwed up, I didn't do that. I was just going fast, or trying to hurry up, so I ended up with all these, you know, glue that didn't get used. I probably didn't get the adhesion I'd really hoped on all these pieces. You know, it is what it is. It's not gonna be the absolute most perfect. This is probably the best design that you can do with wood, is this setup here. But if you wanted to make this lighter, you could get, say, a 1/4 inch MDF, because, you know, this is gonna end up being almost 3 full sheets. It's heavy. There's no way about it. Then you put your machine on top of it. So if you did metal, you could probably get away with, you know, using aluminum if you did it correctly. This one, it's gonna be wood. It's gonna be almost 3 of those. So if you use, like, say, a 1/4 MDF, the real strength in these ribs is that they don't wanna bend this way, you know. Obviously, if you took the board, you could bend it like that, like a snake. But the strength is in the ribs of it, kind of like your I-beams. If you have a basement, you'll look at that. They're exploiting metal there to make sure that it doesn't bend that way. Same principles that being used here, and then the top and bottom of your I-beam are attached to this because that doesn't want to compress and doesn't want to move, and it can also hold weight. Same thing's kind of happening here, but they also, since it's a big skin on all of them, they all support each other. So whenever you do this, make sure you have a very, very flat surface and assemble it on that. And then once you get one side done, I put a bunch of wood or other objects on there to evenly distribute the weight, and then add more weight to push it down. I did use some little nails just to hold it in place. They don't really do much. I wouldn't advise using screws. I mean, if everything's flat and as flat as flat, you shouldn't need them. The glue is what's gonna hold it together. And if you didn't get the glue, then you're not gonna get the strength you want out of this anyways, because if these can slide on the panels and it wasn't glued, it's just not gonna work anyways. Like, I missed out on some glue on this, but overall, I got it, so I'm not too terribly worried, and I know on this top part I'll get it, so. Gonna start working on that. I'll drill those holes, and then I'll check in with you in a little bit. Okay, so I ended up getting to this part here, having all this built. It looks like I must have lost the footage from it, or I didn't press record, one or the other, so that was real great. Anyways, there wasn't anything too impressive that you missed out on. I will say this is just the rolling cart part of it. I know some people were saying to put these guys over here for better support, everything else. All I care about with this stand is that it supports the weight, because the way that the top is built on it, it's not flexing. Even if this part flexes everything, it will not flex. The strength that is built in a torsion box is insane. I don't know the exact numbers of it. I'm an electrical engineer. I am not a mechanical engineer, just a wire guy. So I could dive into that. I just know it's super, super strong. But what I do know is that you always need more power on these things. So adding 4 outlets here, 4 outlets to the other side of this. I have just a temporary wire run currently. What I do off of that is grab an electrical cord, and not saying for anybody else to try this, just saying it's worked out great for me. Don't know what codes are in your area, don't want to walk through safety with electricity. Just know it hurts until you don't feel it anymore. So do it at your own risk. I'm not going to walk through that. There's plenty of YouTube videos of guys who want to put their neck on that stuff. It is possible, but all up to you. Anyways, I will take an extension cord, a thicker one, probably 12 to 14 gauge, if not a little thicker, just for safety, and run it into this box and then just have it coiled up. So this whole cart will be able to be rolled around, and it will just have the torsion box resting on top of it. Now the width of this, made sure to think this one through because I did not on my previous box, but this one is 3 feet. So it will not fit through most doors, but in my basement, to the entrance to my basement, I have double doors, and then to the room that was built there prior to me purchasing it, it has double doors which are a bit smaller, but they're around, I think it's a ½ inch wider than 4 foot with the double doors. This will fit amply, but the torsion box would not. So this was my solution here to reduce weight, then also fit through there. So this will all be on wheels. And once this gets through the door, then I'll just bring the torsion box through, flip it on here. It isn't going anywhere. That torsion box is heavy as hell. This is heavy as hell. I did put some countersink Craig screws underneath here, Craig screw holes. If I find that it moves, I don't think it's going to move. I mean, that's a ton of weight, and the amount of movement you might even see is almost nothing. But I did make this smaller than the torsion box only because I didn't want this massive, massive support structure for it, cart, whatever you want to call it, and also because it wouldn't have fit through the door all in one because of how big the Journeyman upgrade is going to be. So for this one, this will all work. I will probably add shelves to it. So I put my electrical boxes on the outside here. So yeah, that kind of doesn't let you put it flat against the wall on this side. Not a big deal to me. But it leaves all this space open for drawers, shelves, whatever you want to do, old material. What I found is I have drawers in my other one. I found that back here, I don't end up really using, so I want to think of something else to do with it, because after the drawer depth, you still have probably around a foot. And then I didn't make my drawers full width. This one, I might actually do that. I found that I use the drawers a lot more than I thought I would, no pun intended. But yeah, this is what it is so far. The other thing that I did add to it was on the bottom. It's got, so yeah, I just used scrapped MDF, so they met right here. This is a middle support for it, but they met right here, so I just put that and split it and had them screw into there. I'm not worried about it. Doesn't look the prettiest, but it will work. Anyways, these will be supports for the rolling wheels here, which should arrive anytime today. I put 4 of those on there. I'm just gonna have 4 wheels on this. That'll be just fine. I'm using 4-inch casters. The bigger the wheels, the more things it can roll over and you don't really have to worry about. I like using the, they're more like the skateboard wheels. Use 6-inch wheels, then you can go over bigger stuff and not really worry too much about it. I think 4 was a nice compromise on price and what they could deal with. This other table I got here, those are 4-inch wheels on that one. And it's real nice just to have everything roll around. Even if you think you'll never ever have it roll around, worst case scenario, it sits there. Best case scenario, you got stuff under there you want to get, you just unlock the wheels, move it around. I know that some people are saying, oh man, you need to have the wheels do this, 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 and buy these special ones and whatever. If you're that worried about them moving when they get there, lightly lift it up on one side and put a block of wood underneath it. I don't think with this machine in particular there will be any problem with movement of any kind, you know, if it moves or not, because it's all on linear. Thanks again for sticking with me for that whole long video. Hopefully you learned something out of it. If you did, I'll like, subscribe, comment, anything else. If you have any questions, I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. Yeah, if you get to building one of these, I know that you won't be disappointed. The only thing that sucks about them is they're very heavy, but other than that, the only thing I think that you could do a little bit better is possibly with metal, but for me, this works just fine. It does everything I need, doesn't look bad, and works real well. So until the next video, thanks guys.